Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
You silence the doubters. You get the best tools. You work with the right people. You look to the future and bust through.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today I have an amazing guest. I have Patti Durand from FCC. How are you, Patti?
I am very happy to be here. Thanks.
Good. I'm so happy to have you. This conversation has been a while in the making, so I'm excited. I do believe you're fired up as well. So what we're going to be talking about today, guys, we have a treat here. As you know, I'm doing a transition planning series on the Impact Farming Show, a deep dive starting with some foundational concepts, moving into communication, where we're at right now, and then throughout the year covering different subjects. My goal here is to bring on the brightest minds in agriculture, like Patti, to share ideas. And I'm really excited about this episode. I've got my foot in the door. Now what? As a great episode for Generation 2, Gen 2, whatever we want to call them, that are coming into the farm, on the farm, and going, okay, now what? I'm hoping, knowing this is going to give our audience some key ideas on where to go, because this is a big can of worms. So welcome, Patti. I'm so excited. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do, and then we'll dive right in.
Thanks. So I am based out of Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and working for Farm Credit Canada. My official title, I think, is Business Advisor, and I focus on transition, working with families, transferring a business from one generation to the other. So I am a member of a team from across Canada. There are over 10 of us now, and it's growing. We are a free service in which farm families can just get a bit of a sense of kind of what are they trying to accomplish, what are they trying to achieve, what's holding them back, and our goal is to give them the confidence to act. Like, as a result of speaking with Patti on this day, what will you do? So this conversation today motivates me greatly, because if we can take these lessons we're learning and put them in other people's hands so they can take it and run with it, that's a great day.
Excellent. Perfect. So I want to touch on that a little bit more. Myself and Anthony, we farm. We have our own farming operation, but we do work with Anthony's parents. I know a lot of farm families. I've seen a lot of stuff, good, bad, and ugly. What I like about the work that you guys are doing is you're making it really actionable, because it's tough as Gen 2 coming into the farming operation. We're young, we're eager, we're passionate, but I feel there's no real roadmap. If you think of it this way, I have a strong corporate background and a farming background. So when you start off in the work world, you take your resume, you get it all spiffy, you practice your interview questions, and you start applying for jobs. And you know what? There's a bit of a ladder in the corporate world, right? And it's a little bit more mapped out. With the farming world, good and bad, there's no real process. And the most complicated part is it's family as well. We show up knowing that we want to farm, but there's no clear path there, right? It's assumptions, hopes, dreams. So I want to just draw that wisdom out of your mind and talk to Generation 2 who's sitting there going, okay, I'm on the farm. Now what? I don't even know what to do or what to say, what to focus on. So I know you share 4 key things that they can focus their energy on. Do you want to dive into that with the first one?
You know what? I do, but I actually just want to take a quick step back, because here's what the driver was for this message. So you talk about the wisdom I have. This is what farms have taught us. This is what farms are showing us. So we have a number of examples where we're sitting at the kitchen table and sort of Gen 2, I would often call the junior partner. So the junior partner is desperately trying to prove their readiness. I'm ready to take the lead. And so in order to do that, they're guessing badly.
Okay.
Like they're like, they go and rent another quarter of land, they hire a part-time employee, they buy some bred heifers, like dabbling in what they view to be actionable management things. Okay. But without the process of decision making with the senior partner first. Like they're trying to like show they're ready to take the bull by the horns, pun intended, but it lands poorly because the parents, the senior partner is like, whoa, like you can't pull those triggers. This isn't the time. We haven't talked about it. It doesn't allow for cash flow. There's a million reasons why not. But we just had a really strong sense that roadmap you described doesn't exist. There often isn't a clear plan for how you will prepare to become a leader. And so that's where this comes from, is having a look at what you have within your control that you can manage that will help to advance the conversation. So just wanted to give some context because it wasn't out of left field. It was like, oh my gosh, people really don't know what to do. And it's not lack of care. It's literally they just haven't done it before.
Yeah. Hey, and I have been there. We did that same, okay, we're here. We've started farming, and then we did the part-time thing and then the full-time thing. But then now you're going, wait a minute, we want to buy the farm, but there's no plan here. There's no conversations. There's a lot of mixed feelings, hot, cold. And I mean, we could go a million different ways with that. So this is great because I don't think enough people are talking about this. So thank you. Okay.
No, absolutely.
Want to dive in with number 1. Where do you want to start? Role clarity?
Yeah, you know what? It becomes really clear when I have led this topic as a workshop. I'll do a poll amongst the attendees and say, what hat are you wearing on the farm right now? And I give quite a variety of options. Like, are you the livestock manager? Are you crops manager? Are you land acquisition manager? Are you equipment? All of these different things, all the way down the list to I do what I'm told. And there's a really concerning number of people that they're doing what they're told, and they're craving further authority and craving understand that they need to develop more skills, but there hasn't been that conversation about, okay, so what's going to happen next and who's going to do what next. I would argue a lot of it comes from the fact that most farmers, most primary producers, they wear every hat. They're jack of all trades. And so they don't necessarily think about it that way. And so when they think about passing the baton, the sensation is water from a fire hose. It's all this all at once. And how can we begin to pass it? So I propose that, first of all, a bit of a self-assessment. What hat, what authority do I have right now? What am I in charge of right now, if anything? And what would I like to be in charge of? Is a beautiful first step to say, hey, you know what, my senior partners, mom and dad, I would be really interested in getting a better understanding of equipment management in terms of depreciation, in terms of ongoing maintenance, all of those decisions that go around it. What is our capacity? Where do we need to maybe expand? Where are we over-equipped? Those types of things would be one example. Could I dig into that? Could I take the lead for that in the next year with the goal of developing better understanding? By piecing out some of those hats a little bit, I think it demonstrates commitment and genuine interest in that development. And so that conversation, I don't know that's happening very much. And I think it's an opportunity.
And I like to try and relate to the founders as well. And I've in every episode, probably for the last 4 episodes already. I'm old enough to be on that side where I appreciate the founders. I've worked really hard to build what I have. And I think the joy of farming, we get to make decisions once every year for our crop and our genetics. So that goes by really quick and you really feel like you're getting your prime. So I think as the younger generation, I just want to share this here, is we need to be respectful in the fact that we don't want the founders don't want to be dethroned And if you come in there guns a-blazing, wanting to take over the whole show, it's just a little bit much, right? So by showing initiative and trying to grab a piece would be very similar. I hate to go back to the corporate world, but when you come into a company, you don't shoot straight to the top. My gosh, you're going to spend your whole career trying to get there. So if you come in, you're starting in the administrative type of role in a company, but then on the farm, you're just saying, hey, let me learn the ropes of this and then this. And I would imagine what you just said, Patti, is a lot less threatening to the founders, wouldn't it be?
It is. That's a piece of it, certainly. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, this is not about anybody leaving. We need all of these parties on farm for quite some time for a transition to go really smoothly, and that the baton gets passed. Another analogy that, just like eating an elephant, this is one bite at a time. And I agree. If you come as a junior partner and say, here's something I'm really interested, I know I'm not prepared to take the lead on this right now, I'd like to become prepared. Can we talk about that? I think it's acknowledging just how much knowledge the senior partner has. And that's another point I would say is, imagine if your senior partner weren't there tomorrow. What knowledge do they have that you would literally be held hostage without? So not to be negative, but to be realistic. They have a wealth of knowledge and lifetime experience. And so how might you start to piece that out so you can start the building blocks? And if you acknowledge this building block at a time, it really is a show of respect. Man, you have a lot of abilities. I want to learn, and here's how I'm going to do it.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I took that a little left field.
No.
But
not at all. No.
I kind of try and like to bridge the gap a little bit, because I'm old enough to respect the founders now and what they go through, but I'm also very young. I'm young enough to appreciate the eagerness and the hunger of the junior partners, junior farmers that are coming up. So anyways, I want to go there.
Well, I think that hunger, I want to help them to channel that energy. So here's a really productive use of that energy that won't be threatening, that won't appear that you're trying to position to do a hostile takeover. This is a way that you can piece it out. And so there's actually a tool that we have an example of, and we're going to share it as part of this episode. And it's a skills and knowledge assessment, so that you can go through. What we did was we pieced out about 30 different areas of management on the farm and look at it and evaluate yourself. I don't recommend evaluating each other. Tends not to go well. We think you suck at this, doesn't go well. But if you evaluate yourself and basically give yourself a rating, and it instructs on how to do that, but am I fully skilled at this, developing, I know nothing, or that's actually a service or something that we have someone off farm take care of for us. By looking at that and piecing that out, you can actually make a performance plan, which corporate, sound familiar?
Yes.
You would never go through a career without thinking about personal development. And I worry that it's not as intentional on a farm as it could be. And so this could be a tool to help someone to think about a bit of a game plan for what they have to learn.
Yeah, you're right. Corporate, it's very intentional. It's very annual. And we need to do that, because just think, for a position in a corporate setting, there's often 10 people competing for it. So you got to be the smartest, brightest, best to be promoted. So I like taking that concept and bringing that over to farming. You don't have to do it because you're competing against somebody, but why don't you compete against yourself, right? And be the best for your role on the farm, as you're saying.
Totally. I think, interestingly, I had one young gentleman who I'd spoken with and shared this tool with, and he called me back actually a week later, and he said, Patti, he said, I don't know if you should share this with people. And I said, tell me more. He said, so I filled it out. He said, I don't know how to do anything. He said, this is so demotivating. And I'm like, I actually think that's the point. Mm-hmm. There is a wealth of information, and you don't have the ability to download the hard drive of your senior partners.
Yes.
But if you piece it out and intentionally lean into what you have to learn and break that out, there is a lot to learn. And so when you come home and say, I want to take this over, and they say, no, you're not ready,
Yeah.
They really do mean it. And they probably have a piece of accuracy. Every situation is different. But this is a way to get a bit of perspective on exactly how much there is to learn and to make a game plan to get there.
Okay, excellent. And I do believe you're willing to share that assessment, that tool with our audience, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything that we develop in terms of the FCC Advisory Services team, we really want to put it in people's hands. We just think about what's holding people back and what tools could help them get there faster. And not in an effort to replace any other services in the industry, but just recognizing that there seems to be a lot of hesitation and uncertainty, and we want people to get some clarity so they can kind of very confidently make some decisions.
Excellent. So what we'll do is we'll include that in the show notes of this page. So if you're watching, listening, and you would like that tool, just go to Farm Marketer, Impact Farming, find this episode, and it'll be in the show resource section. Okay,
thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So role clarity. That is fantastic. That's our first point. Get clear on your role, where you are, where you want to go. Did you want to expand on that, or are you ready to move on to the next section?
I think probably the only comment I would make, just to put a bow on it, is that at sitting at kitchen tables and speaking with farm families, I ask the junior partner or the senior partner, what are the areas of expertise on the farm? They tend to underestimate the list. So that's why breaking this out can really be fruitful. So for example, they're like, okay, agronomy, okay, livestock management, okay, those financial management, those things tend to be, obvious picks. There's a lot of things like, how much experience do you have in land negotiations, for example? So it digs into a few more of those things. And so I encourage everybody to check it out.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So let's move on to the second key area that you want to touch on, training and preparing to lead.
Yeah, role clarity and doing that assessment leads beautifully into this point. So now that you know what you don't know, or you've identified your gaps or the holes in the preparing to lead, how are you going to get trained? And again, if we want to do the corporate comparison, not all training is going to be in-house. So there is a lot of hands-on farm training. You just need to go through the seasons of the operation and experience it and know how your operation is managing particular tasks or things that are on the to-do list. But sometimes on farm is not going to be the best place to learn. And so think about all of the incredible abundance of resources available in our world right now. We have podcasts, we have videos, we have webinars, there are opportunities in university courses, diploma courses, more applicable trades courses, there are books you can read, there's mentors you can reach out to. There is a cornucopia. So if you are not in a place where you are in continuous learning, I would encourage you to have a gander. If we can live that life of constantly improving ourselves, you can benefit yourself, and so will the farm business.
Absolutely. I have been building Farm Marketer, our media company, since, well over a decade. And I have not stopped learning because there are so many different areas that you need to learn, just like farming. And the better you are, the more money you make, the better life gets, et cetera, right? So
totally.
I think it's so important for farmers. And you see that too. A lot of farmers out at these events and seminars, just soaking it in, talking to different partners. So that's great to see.
The statistics show only about 1 in 10 farming people tend to go to those types of training sessions, tend to look at that. And so,
I guess
I think we can do better. And I want to just fan that flame and encourage it. Just because you cross that threshold and cross the stage after your post-secondary education, of which many people have pursued, whatever that might look like, trade or degree or diploma or otherwise, whatever that is, that's not a finish line. That's the beginning. And so when I'm sitting at the table with clients, one of my phrases I'll frequently say is, you could fill an ocean with what I don't know. I have come to appreciate the more I know, the more gaps that I have, but I'm going to find out. So that type of approach can be super fruitful and really lend yourself to that humility we talk about when we're respecting our senior partners. We got a lot to learn.
Yeah. And maybe it's a personality thing, but I find continuous learning keeps life exciting.
It's where passion lives. There's such an intrigue. There's such a place to lean in and really carve out what is your path.
Yeah.
Something that I would make a comment on. I have so much respect for farmers who survived the 80s. There was a particular period of time, and into the 90s, that there was some years when it was really, really challenging. And so that is one example where I have met a number of men and women who have a great gut feel for decision making as a result of those hard times. In particular financial decision making. However, they'll be darned if they can teach it. So sometimes when I hear a young man or woman saying, we should be looking at this purchase, and their senior partner is like, no. But they can't really necessarily unpack the why. They aren't wrong. Their judgment is accurate. But sometimes some of those off-farm training pieces, it's a good thing to think about asking the senior partner, is this something you feel comfortable teaching? Is this something that you want to be training me on? Or should I be seeking elsewhere, some other direction, and then we can kind of come together and find our path? That can be very time well spent. I think sometimes too, personality types, not everybody is going to be great at teaching or learning. And so keeping that door open and saying, you know what, there's more than one way that we can approach this, make it your own and figure out the best way that you're going to learn the skills that you need.
Excellent. You hit the nail on the head with that one. There is nothing like a few hard knocks in life to learn that not everything goes according to plan or how you want it to, right? And then the next time you go to buy X, you go, okay, it's just that wisdom. You've traveled a few miles, and I get it. I kind of bridging that too, that hunger with the wisdom of the founders. I'm already there where when I'm making this decision again for the second or third time, I'm going, oh, okay, it's not all puppies and rainbows and Skittles and great things like it was when we first did X. Now we're about to do that, but we know calf prices can go down to 800. I mean, that's good risk management and knowing that. But knowing that and experiencing that is totally different, exactly like you said. So,
absolutely. So it's one of those things. So assuming that you're just going to absorb it by osmosis is unlikely. Training, knowing what you're missing, and very intentionally filling those gaps is the opportunity you have. If you want to, like I said, get your foot in the door, now what? That's some time well spent.
Perfect. So training and preparing to lead. That was fantastic, Patti. Do you want to chat more about the third key point, supporting retirement planning? Do you want to go there?
I do. And it feels like a big pivot because it kind of is.
Yes.
And where this comes from is this. So thinking about the senior partners and how they will live for the rest of their life and how they will pay for that for the rest of their life. It is an X variable that is unknown in a large percentage of farm clients that we speak with.
Amen.
They have never had a really strong handle on their cost of living, not because they weren't capable, but because it didn't matter before.
Right.
As you know,
yes.
Many farm expenses, many living expenses that, an average urban person would be very clear on, it gets buried in the farm numbers because those are excellent write-offs. And so, I'm not deterring that. However, if you are sitting there as a junior partner, you're this next generation, and you're getting hesitation from your senior partners in terms of them moving on. They're not quite ready. They're not really sure. You want to talk numbers and they're not ready. Odds are that if you ask that question, do we have a sense of what you're going to need for the rest of your life, what it's going to cost you to live annually, they probably aren't going to know. Again, it's not a matter of intelligence or competence, but rather it didn't matter before. So now it matters. If you place a high level of priority on making sure their needs are met, I feel strongly that that's a great step towards advancing the conversation.
Yes.
The farm has to meet their needs for the rest of their life often. They might have some personal wealth, there might be some investments on the side, but ultimately the farm is going to complete a piece of it. So, therefore, ask that question. How are we going to get there? How are we going to figure that out? And encourage them and support them to do that.
You know, I think that is one of the biggest stumbling blocks to transitions and why the founders don't chat about it. I have seen it happen various times. And in my youth and learning curve, I finally said, wait a minute. If this person does this, generation 2 comes in and buys a farm, they need all that income. So how are the founders going to live? They're probably very uncertain of what's going on, very scared of income. And not only that, what does that life look like after? That's a different subject, but that is fear. And what happens when you are scared? You shut down and you push the conversation off. And then you give hot vibes, cold vibes. I'm retiring. I'm not. But what's at the root of their hesitancy? And I think it's often a financial. What does this look like when I retire?
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, I think, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I'm 70 years old and I'm retiring. I'm hoping I'm going to live to 90 or 100. How am I going to live?
Absolutely.
That is definitely a justified concern. And if somebody doesn't bring that up with the correct words to start that conversation, shut down.
The wording is impactful. I think you're absolutely right. And so I think a lot about the first threshold that a farm needs to cross in terms of can this farm transition is, can it meet the needs of the exiting generation? Period.
Yes.
And sometimes that's as far as you get. And so not to be negative, but that's math that's worth doing. So getting a sense of that, and then can it meet the needs of the incoming generation? And is there anything left over? So it's really a rather simple equation at the end of the day, but there's, again, places that people just haven't gone before. And so they feel pretty unprepared. I've talked to families, I swear they need $6,000 a month. I've talked to families that need $30,000 a month, and I am not joking. It is incredible. So this is not a ballparking. This is not this is not throwing a dart. This really does require a little bit of calculation. And so encouraging senior partners to seek some support on that, because there is great support for it, I think makes a lot of sense.
Excellent. I think that is a powerful conversation right there. Okay. Do you want to add on that point at all? Any further thoughts?
I do.
On that? Okay.
I do. So the best coaching that is the simplest approach. If I was the senior partner, and if you're talking to your senior partners or your parents about this, basically look at 3 to 6 months of bank statements and credit card statements and just pull out what it costs you to live. Just do the math, just tally it up. Okay. By bringing that number to a financial planner, they have software that can permit them to extrapolate that number and project it out for the next 30 or 40 years, as you were describing. Wow. And it allows for inflation. It allows for unforeseen medical costs. You can think about perhaps needing another home if you want a new vehicle, all of those kind of unknowns. So rather than trying to guesstimate it, you can get a pretty specific number. And that's actually, financial planning is often a free service through your day-to-day bank. And so you may not have ever used it before because you've never had money to invest. This isn't an investment conversation as much as it is retirement budgeting conversation.
Okay, that's fantastic. And, you know, I like that you're pointing out there's people there to help, because I'm sitting here going, oof, that's slightly intimidating. I mean, pulling out those costs, that's straightforward. I mean, I do a personal and business budget, so that's straightforward once you're used to doing that. But that can be a little bit intimidating, looking at, okay, we're here, we live this far, and what might come up. That's a little bit of planning there. And I think that's all floating around in the senior partner's mind going, oh my gosh, what if, right? How?
Totally. And why should the junior partner care? This is an obligation that you will have for the rest of your farming life, probably, or at least as long as your senior partner's life. So you want to know what you're on the hook for. And that clarity is a key piece of planning. And so for that reason, just getting a better sense of it and asking about it is, I think, a conversation worth starting.
Okay, excellent.
You silence the doubters. You get the best tools. You work with the right people. You look to the future and bust through.
Any other points on supporting retirement planning?
I think just at the end of the day, placing a priority on the senior partner as opposed to you pushing for your needs, being clear that you care to meet their needs, really shifts the nature of the conversation and what you're asking for.
Yeah. Again, I like where I'm at in life right now. I have been that young, eager individual. And I mean, I was a smart business person. I owned some businesses fairly young, but I did miss that piece that we were looking to buy a farm and then stalling. And then you go, oh, well, wait a minute. And then finally, with a little years and a little wisdom, we're going, wait a minute, that's fear. They don't know what this looks like. We're not having planning conversations. We're not thinking about the senior partners, whatever the case is, right? That took a while, and rightfully so, right? It takes a few years when you're younger. It's always about, I want to buy this farm. This is what I want to do. How can we make it work? Where there is the senior generation that you got to take care of.
The biggest summation I can give is, I think at the end of the day, I find that transition conversations, it's a conversation about compensation. What does everyone need and how can we get there? If everybody is able to clearly articulate and has done their own math, it can really shed some light on what's possible.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Patti.
Thanks.
Now, key number 4, communication. Do you want to share a little bit on that?
This is a funny one for me because I come from a communicating family. I communicate on purpose professionally on a regular basis. And I've really come to appreciate that this is not everybody's comfort level or area of comfort. And so I certainly catch myself advising, you got to communicate better. You got to do this. However, I think we fail to explain how. As a professional industry, as an advising industry, we say, you got to do this, but we neglect to really give a bit of a template on the how. And so those are some specifics I'd like to share today.
Ooh, please do.
So, number 1, intentional farm-focused meetings. When I talk about meetings, I think about the short-term operational conversations and the longer-term strategic conversations. So short-term, what are we going to work on today? What are the priorities? Who's leading what? When we're done those things, what's going to be next in line? Getting your team to just come together, and I'm a huge fan. I prescribe for farms to get a whiteboard in their farm, in their shop all the time, their barn, wherever they gather, because that whiteboard can be that record-keeping place. And so writing down those tasks, putting in order of priority, and who's leading them becomes this go-to piece of efficiency. Everybody is clear. Everybody makes it a priority to be in this conversation. If there's any questions, it can be asked right away. This sounds so basic, I would say, from what would be a normal kind of corporate practice. It doesn't happen on farm as much. Again, I would say probably because of originally smaller teams. But as farms have grown, there's more people. We assume we know what each other is thinking, and I talk about we guess badly. That's another example. We guess badly that everybody has the same priority. So this conversation, it saves relationships and money. If that's not enough, I don't know what is.
Yeah, hit the 2 main ones right there. And on farms, if you're larger, of course you can be doing something like that, but that's already happening informally. Even if you're father and son, daughter and father, whatever the combination is. Okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this, right? It's just not being written down, and it's usually on the fly. But I mean, as we want to be more deliberate and as teams get bigger, write it down, right?
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing that I really like, and I do this actively when I'm leading meetings, when I have a family that when we're, when they're looking at kind of like the best way to move forward, I will frequently use a whiteboard as our minute taker, as where I capture all the comments from the meeting. And then each time you fill a whiteboard, you take a picture of it. So if you did that as a farm family, as your operating farm team, here's our to-do list, take a picture of it every day for whatever 365 days or however many days you meet. Lo and behold, you have a calendar of your farm operation. So what happens in what season, what were our priorities when and why, especially for a junior partner coming back. Again, they have their foot in their door. When they're trying to understand that rhythm without having to read their senior partner's mind, this is a way that they can do that. And it just gets a little more intentional, and there's a bit of a record to fall back on.
I want to ask you a question, Patti. I'm looking in my mind, thinking of some of the farmers I know and the older generation. I think with our generation and younger, this is all going to be super easy and straightforward. We're used to so much information and tools and processes. If somebody of our generation is farming with the senior generation still, if that's the dynamic, how do you, I'm going to ask you the question, it's pretty straightforward, but bear with me. Dad doesn't really see any need to sit down and formally meet. Do you ever run into that with your clients? Where they go, I don't want to meet. Why do we need to meet? Why do we need to sit down? We talk about it at coffee every morning. Do you ever get resistance from any farmers on that?
There has been a little bit of pushback at times. I would say more often than not, it's probably, again, where we're saying to do it, but not how. Okay. And so that kind of like suggestion of way that you could lay it out is what I offer. And, like I said, prescribe, get a whiteboard, put it up. Worst case scenario, you can use it for organizing your to-do list and your shopping list for parts. Like that's, there's even that's communication. Even that is like, oh, everybody can build upon this. And I think that there's different ways to do it. I talked to one farmer. They put dry erase, like whiteboard markers in all of their implements on the farm, and all of their team was asked to write the most recent maintenance on the window of that implement.
Oh, okay.
And so when there'd been an oil change, when it had been greased, it was just like the most recent date. And so without having to communicate every minutia of every piece of equipment, it automatically went with the equipment. So again, there's different ways that you can share these things. And it's efficiency, taking good care of their equipment in that case, and also accountability. You know what? I know you're the last person to use that tractor. You obviously didn't do a once over and it's out of washer fluid, for example. Those are the types of things that can just be better habits of opening doors of communication. Another, like I know lots of farms that have like a WhatsApp team chat, and one of them is for fun and one of them is for purpose, and they usually separate them a little bit. But again, what are we doing when, and what's the central place of information where everybody knows what the answer is? And so there's no question for safety and efficiency. There's a lot of opportunities to open those doors. So I guess I'll push back. Find the one that suits you, but don't, if you feel like you're feeling some friction, 9 times out of 10, it's communication that would be a part of the solution.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Sorry, get me going on this. It's a topic I'm passionate about. Well, and I think the other piece of it, when I talked about a junior partner coming home, there's a million questions that the senior partners know answers to. that the junior partner, they could have grown up on the farm, they could have been riding in the tractor the whole time, they could have been in the corral with the cattle, all of these things. You're still not going to know those things. You're still not going to know every answer. So creating a permission slip for the junior partner to be curious and the senior partner to not feel judged is a win.
Yes.
So if I'm saying, Tracy, why'd you do it that way? Tracy, tell me more. Tracy, why does it have to be done at this time of year? At some point, as a senior, you start to get a little annoyed and threatened or judged. But if you say, you know what, I'm trying to learn, and so it does matter that I understand why this particular task has to happen on, at the beginning of May every year. And maybe it's obvious to you, but it's not obvious to me yet. So you have to help me get there.
Oh, I love it. And it's just that curiosity part. And you know why I like conversations like this is because I've done these mistakes. Anthony's done these mistakes where you come in, you're young, you're passionate, guns a-blazing. Also, we have all this knowledge at a young age that we think we have, right?
Yes.
God bless our youth, right? And there's so much in that. But it is natural to become defensive. And again, where I say I'm in that sweet spot in age where, as a founder, if I had somebody coming at me in my face all the time, if it's not done right, and depending on personalities and tones and intention, you might get defensive. And you know what? That type of tone to a conversation hurts relationships. And family farms, it's not only business, it's family, right? So I love bringing these conversations where you said curious. Just adding that word. I'm curious, Dad, why you do it that way, versus Patti, why do you do it that way?
Right.
We should do it this way. Just adding one word. And I love it. Like, that can just take so much. When you say, I'm curious, Tracy, why you do it that way, my shoulders drop. I feel more comfortable, less defensive. Where you go, Tracy, why'd you do it that way? My shoulders, me saying it, my shoulders are going up and I'm feeling uncomfortable. Yep. So, and it's just tiny things, but communication is key to everything. So I love these conversations. And
I have a video that I'm sharing that builds on a lot of these. And so the link, I know you said that you would share, and I appreciate it because it builds on a lot of these concepts. It's like we don't always do a great job of putting ourselves in each other's shoes and saying, like, how is this going to land? How is this going to feel? Yeah. Which, when I talked about, there was the daily kind of operational meetings. That's where the longer term, maybe quarterly or annual strategic meetings come from. What is our ultimate goal? Where are we all aiming? Can we get it all aligned to the same destination? Because we often have different thoughts in mind, and that's good. Mm-hmm. But if we can all get aiming to the same place, think about the power like that and then therefore we trust that everybody's aiming the same place, as opposed to, why did you do that? It's like, I can appreciate that you must have done that for a good reason, but darn if I can think of what that might be right now. Can you tell me more? Yes. And those things, those conversations, when you are intentionally sitting down and talking on a regular basis, and there's another time coming up. So we're going to meet again in 3 months on this date. We're going to put it on the calendar. It gives a platform for that conversation. It's a place to unpack it, as opposed to bottling it up for decades, where I've sat at those tables too, and those things have never been shared prior to our conversation.
That's heartbreaking. I know personally, at different times in my life, farming or not, where you keep a conversation that you want to have, something that's bothering you inside of you for so long. And I've seen it happen with farmers and friends and family. You think this is going to happen, but you don't want to ask. You don't want to rock the boat. So you assume and you just leave it. And that builds up and that doesn't feel good. It causes resentment, where it's not that hard to communicate, right? Coming from that right place.
That's also when, if you recognize, like, wow, there's big stuff here that we are not talking about, it's very reasonable that you would reach out to a third party. Mm. And so to have someone as a facilitator or a mediator or coach or working with there's a number of different examples of those types of resources in the industry. Our team can be that. Sometimes our team tends to focus on helping people get started. And then if you need a longer term coach, that's someone that you would engage with maybe a little bit differently. But it's not unreasonable that you could use some help on this. You don't have to figure this out by yourselves. And why make the same mistakes? Why not learn from someone else's mistakes and avoid them?
Amen. I have hired a coach for my business too, to learn what I didn't know that I needed to know, right? Okay, Patti, I want to ask you that question because I am a very action-oriented person. I know you are too. And sometimes the game changer is in the step by step by step. So you mentioned that your team at FCC works with farm families, and I'm giving you guys a plug here intentionally and not intentionally. I just want people to know how that looks. And also when we walk through this step by step, it removes a lot of the unknown. So let's say I'm here in a farm family operation. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. We don't know what to suggest because we don't know all the options. So Patti, I'm sitting here listening to the show right now, and I want somebody to help us. So what do? I call FCC and say, I want to talk to somebody about transition planning. And how does that process work? What does that look like? Do you mind going there?
No problem. Absolutely. So what happens is that we would encourage any farmer, whether you're an FCC customer or not, is who we serve, and just call the closest FCC office to where you live. And actually, if you go to the fcc.ca, there's a location finder and it can direct you, and there'll be a number to call. And by calling the office, you can just say that I'm looking for some assistance with doing some transition planning, and just say that you're interested in meeting. What we find is that some customers just have a few questions. Some customers would prefer a conversation like we're talking about in terms of wanting to get the ball rolling with their family and thinking about what needs to happen, but also perhaps what order. And so we serve customers according to their needs. Very frequently, what the time we're spending is helping them set up to engage with a professional. So engaging with an accountant or a lawyer or a mediator or a coach or a transition planner. There's a lot of different resources that we really work to connect people with. But ultimately, the time we spend tends to be helping them kind of get their thoughts in order, because they start to think about transition and it gets like this. There's so many pieces of the puzzle and it just gets all kind of knotted in, and they dip a toe in. And so they have a sense of urgency, but they literally don't know what to ask or who to ask.
Yes.
And so I think about our team being the bridge for a customer to get to the point that they're ready to take action. And for that reason, it's a really meaningful job. This work, people have such a sense of worry and concern about making good choices. There tends to be a lot of the horror stories in the industry about how badly this can go. I personally tend to look at it, I'd rather offer a carrot than a hammer, meaning you can do this. This is possible. You have great tools in your toolbox, but you got to get going. This does not take care of itself. It does take intention. And so let's think about what you're missing and what order you need to approach it in so that you can make really good informed decisions.
Oh, I love it. And these are the tools tools and conversations I wish existed, and maybe they were there, we just didn't know about it when we first came back to the farm. And I imagine many people would have loved these conversations, because exactly, what do you say? How do you plan? You just start to spin, and lo and behold, you're 40, 50, 60, and you're still hanging on, right? And you still haven't taken the farm. So, okay, one other question too. I'm going to pretend I'm back in my 20s. We were keen, we were eager, we still are, but we're not that young. And we wanted to come back to the farm. And we bought our own cows, so finally we could support ourselves. And Anthony's parents do their own thing. but we still don't know what that transition planning looks like. And, there's so many parts. I'm going to call you guys up, but I, as Tracy and Anthony, we want to get an idea of what this all looks like. We don't want to talk to the parents, and we don't want to bring in the parents yet. Can I call you and say, Patti, or whoever's in the local office that does this service, here's our situation. This is what we would love to do. What's our next steps? What does this look like? Can we do that just as our generation? Because I find sometimes if there's two generations that are talking and nobody has a clue on how to get this done, there's resistance and desire, and maybe there's desire on both sides. You'll just spin. So the way I would want to approach it is, hi, so-and-so, Patti, let's say in this case, Anthony and I want to buy his parents' farm. We don't really know how to go about this. Can we chat and you can kind of give us what that looks like, things we need to think about, what we need to grow? Is that an appropriate way? Sometimes I know we're all about that big communication, but I would want to personally be prepared before a bit of an action plan and then start the conversation. Because I think if you don't have a hot clue yourself, how do you...
We don't have a rule for who has to be at the table.
Okay.
So, and so the way I would describe that is we meet customers where they are. So sometimes it's exactly as described. It's the junior partners and they're having some uncertainty. They're not sure which steps to take. And it's just a sounding board and sort of some clarity on some approaches. So it really would be very similar messages to what I shared today in terms of, so here's some things that you're going to think of. In your case, you're describing even before you come back to the farm. So it would be, okay, so what assessment of the farm financial position might you want to think about? For example, I would say that we also meet with many senior partners. It feels as though the junior partners are waiting for their parents to tell them how it's going to be.
Yes.
How is this going to unfold? That somehow the senior partners are holding back this magical plan.
Yes.
There is no plan. Often it's so concerning.
Yes.
And yet it's not as though but I would say it's the blur of business and parental and child relationships. That's what parents do, is they instruct, they tell, they lay things out. And so the parents are feeling an obligation. My argument back to them, and I do sit down with certainly many senior partners and say, okay, do you know what it's going to cost you to retire? Same conversation. Do you know that X variable? Because that's the first threshold we have to cross. That's the first thing that everything else will be built upon. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is, you don't have to figure this out alone. You're in a business partnership arrangement. It might not be called formal partnership in terms of structure, but you're partnering on this. You don't have to figure out this plan. That is the benefit of this team. So can you come to the same table and lay that out? And I respect that it's hard to get there at times, but we actually spend some time on scripting. How might you say that? Let's talk about how that might sound. How might you say it? What worries you about it? Those types of things. So I say this jokingly at times, but we don't make transition plans. That's not our team's purpose. Our purpose is to grease wheels. We want to get you going. So wherever you're stuck at, let's kind of assess that and think about what's next.
That is gold. And you know what? From what I've seen and experienced, don't think it's the big hard things that are the hard things. It's the little things. I mean, the plan, but it's also, my goodness, I know countless farm children that are scared to death of having that conversation. And what do you say if you don't have that plan? And even that scripting. Okay, I want to talk to my parents. How do I say this? How do I bring it up?
Yes.
It's just those tiny things that are the big mountains that we need to climb, right?
Completely.
Completely. I love this.
I've told my mom multiple times that she taught me how to do this. As I mentioned, I grew up in a communicating family, and my farming dad passed away at 51.
Okay.
And I can think of multiple times that we all came to the table, and there was some challenging discussions and conversations, but we came to the table. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. And so it has shown me what's possible. And I care to share that with other people. This is possible, but it doesn't happen spontaneously. It doesn't happen without care and intention. And so that's the opportunity. Stand up and figure out what you got to get done. And if you don't know what the answer is, reach out for help to figure that out.
Ooh, I love it. That was powerful. Okay, so we have covered role clarity, training, preparing to lead, supporting the retirement planning, communicating on purpose. That was a lot of really good stuff. And I love that we dove into step by step. How do you do this? What does that look like? Because to me, that is one of the biggest blocks. Sure, I want to pick up the phone all the time and call all these experts that Tracy talks to, but how does that look? Right? There's a lot of concern. Even if you're sitting in the audience and you want to work with the transition specialist, I'll share my vulnerable experience in hiring a coach. I hired a coach to help me grow my media company for a marketer. You know how long it took me to do that, Patti? And it's good to think things through and make wise decisions and not throw money away. But there was a lot of vulnerability in there. And it's a weird, ironic human fault, I would say. I don't want to hire this coach because then he's going to know that I don't know this stuff. And how silly is that, right? That's why you're hiring them. So I think the key too, and I like naming that because I've been through it, is that vulnerability. We're concerned of picking up the phone and saying, we don't know. Like, I don't have a hot clue on how to transition the farm from the founders to us. I don't have a hot clue. Can somebody help me? Just being vulnerable, right?
I think to further highlight that, I've certainly heard customers and clients, whatever you call them, the farms we sit with have said, I don't want to sit in front of my professional and feel stupid. And so I get that. I don't want to sit in front of someone who is, professionally trained and maybe intimidates me a little bit to tell them I don't know what I'm even asking. I had one owner of a very successful large operation say that he was feeling like he was showing up to a game he'd never played before when he was thinking about transition. And so I took that thought and expanded it. I said, yeah, like you're showing up to play football in hockey equipment. And it really is that. This is not a question of intelligence or competence. It is literally something you have not done before. It would make every piece of sense that you would need some support and help. But I respect that you are hesitant to drop some dollars and spend some money on it when you don't even really know what you're asking for. Yeah. If we can give you that confidence to make that investment, because it generally is an investment, getting all of the pieces of the puzzle from a structure and tax perspective, from an HR perspective, all of those pieces, that is something that will be an investment. There will be some dollars. But before you get to that state, I respect that you want to get a little bit better sense of what you're asking for. And it makes like I said, it makes a ton of sense that people are hesitant, but we can help. We can hopefully give you some confidence so you can ask some of those questions and not be so reluctant, because you deserve to understand what you're asking for and clearly state it.
Oh, I love it. That's a great service that you guys are providing. I could see where that would feel good, right? Sitting down with you, had we had you guys to talk about, and even at the point we're at in life, it would be great to sit down with somebody and go, okay, financially, how do we transition this? What does that look like? And I'm going to do segments down the line about some different lending programs, but these are things we don't know as farmers, nor should we. That's what our professionals are for. And I guess, can we call you guys a coach, an advisor? Yeah, you're all of the above, aren't you?
I say this jokingly, I said I am not an accountant, nor a lawyer, nor a counselor, but I kind of wear some of those hats at various times, being very clear. I'm not going to say do this, but I'm more likely to say, from my experience, I would encourage you to ask this.
Nice.
It's distinct. I would also comment, we have no illusion that we're going to be able to help every farm. there's a very small team, really, when you think about the, how many thousands of farms there are in Canada. But I really do think that the lessons we're learning, that we're sharing in podcasts like this, that we're sharing on YouTube in videos, that we're putting out in various publications, that we're sharing on social media, all of those pieces, together with the incredible team of advisors that already exists in this industry, we're really trying to get everybody encouraged to go in the same direction, because there's a lot of really important work that needs to be done.
Amen, sister. That's fantastic. Okay, we covered a lot of really good stuff. Those were amazing words of wisdom. Do you want to share anything else as we work to wrap up the interview? Do you want to share words of wisdom, any resources, how people can connect with you? I'll give you the stage to wrap up.
Oh, that's very kind. So I feel strongly that this is not something people have to do alone. And more than anything, in their independent farming nature, they tend to be kind of master of everything. And this is something that it would make sense that you'd want to get some help. So number one, whether it's our team or another resource in the industry, get on it. I have yet to meet someone who started this conversation too early. I absolutely have sat at tables where it was the 11th hour and choices were made for the family because they had left it too late. Aww. So that would be my one call to action, is if you think, our farm's not in transition, I'll give a big reveal. Every farm is in transition all the time. It's just whether or not you're paying attention and proactively planning ahead for it. Change will happen. Are you thinking about how you will manage that and blaze your own trail through it?
That is gold, Patti. Awesome. Okay. Thank you for sharing those final words of wisdom and encouragement. That's fantastic. If people want to connect, I know we covered that a little bit more. We'll share the show resources, but how can people benefit from the information that FCC shares and your services?
Certainly. So FCC office, your local location, call them and they will connect you with one of our team members if that is what your need is, or if you have a few questions, we'll certainly connect that way. If you go to fcc.ca/knowledge, there is a depth of resource there in terms of the process through transition planning, the conversations, and a number of different resources, again, action-oriented, things that you can do yourself to kind of get your head around this. Myself, you could follow me on Twitter at Pelvera, Pelvera. I'm also on Instagram, Patti.Durand. And anytime that I can share resources or connect people with good ideas, that's a great day in my book. So you can follow along.
Lovely. Thank you, Patti. And thank you for the wisdom and work you're doing. It's not easy, but it is so very important. So thank you very much.
It will take all of us to get there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And you in the audience, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did with Patti, it was phenomenal. Make sure you like it, share it, get it out there so other farmers can hear the words that Patti shared and change the outcome of their farm transition. So thank you, Patti, and thank you for joining us. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You silence the doubters. You get the best tools. You work with the right people. You look to the future and bust through.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.